This is Luke Paulson, the Catholic Conservative, and welcome to the news of the week for March 28th, 2026. And if you enjoy these videos, do not forget to like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe for more. Iran missile launchers. Our military has done a great job taking out Iranian defensive capabilities. These missile launchers were not thought to reach past 1,200 miles. For reference, the United States is about 2,897 miles across. Iran hit Diego Garcia, which is almost 2,500 miles away. As such, their missiles could take out almost any major city in Europe, China, Russia, and a large portion of Africa. Iran's missiles have been compared to North Korea's nuclear arsenal. But they do not chant death to America or send terror proxies into America as part of the global intifada. This is supported by Mayor Zohran Mamdani of New York, as you recall, and North Korea is not sending groups to colonize Europe. In short, they are a threat, but probably not to the American homeland directly. Now, I believe that Iran is a threat, but many in the conservative movement do not. Benedict Trump. I'm not going to throw President Trump out with the bathwater. My mom says to give someone credit even if it is for the rising of the sun. When President Barack Obama or Joe Biden did the right thing, however alarmingly rare, I tried to give them credit for it. It has been said that the evil that men do lives after them, but the good is often buried with their bones. President Trump has done so many good things, and only those with Trump derangement syndrome cannot see it. However, there's another civil war in the MAGA movement over Israel, specifically with Iran. In other words, the Democrats believe that President Trump is controlled by the Russians, and some Republicans believe that he is controlled by Israel. Israel was going to attack Iran regardless, but protecting our overseas assets is one of the president's jobs. Now, like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie, President Trump seems to be throwing his supporters under the bus, and then uplifting people who opposed him. I honestly have no idea what is going on. I hope President Trump is not compromised by the deep state.
You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Now, speaking of the deep state, let us talk about delayed justice, ineffective Trump justice. Martin Luther King Jr. once stated, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice." I am not sure that I agree with that in the earthly sense of the phrase. There are too many evils that go without justice. I would instead say, the arc of human justice is limited, but the justice of God will be satisfied. There have been a lot of fraudsters and scammers who have been caught by James O'Keefe, Nick Shirley, and Elon Musk. However, almost none of them have been arrested, and the money has not been returned. I mentioned Mr. O'Keefe's story on Skid Row last week, but what I forgot to mention was the fact that the police there admitted that they would do nothing. Undoubtedly, the same is true at the federal level. Meanwhile, 130 subpoenas have finally been issued regarding the criminal actions of James Comey to undermine President Trump while he was in office. I'm not going to hold my breath regarding arrests, but if we look at the Skid Row officers and people like Comey, President Trump and his actual allies may be working hard to get things done, but even more people are standing in their way. To further complicate things is the fruit of the poisonous tree. While James Comey can just send 2 FBI agents into the White House, because the process is the punishment, as opposed to President Trump and his team who have to dot every I and cross every T. Otherwise, they cannot get anything to stick. Combine this with the people working to undermine him, and it is no wonder that no earthly justice has taken place. Unlike President Obama, President Trump does not consider himself a king. Now let us talk about some more fraud, found by the one and only Nick Shirley. Hospice and a motel. Nick Shirley exposed the Somali pirates for the thieves that they are. In fact, they stole so much money that the military did not even spend the same amount in Iran in a week. However, Democrats are only penny pinching about one of these two. Meanwhile, Nick Shirley claims to have found $170 million in California hospice fraud. He even found a motel where it looked like every other room was the address of a fake hospice office. However, the parking lot was full of luxury cars.
Coincidence? I think not!
Naturally, instead of bringing Nick Shirley onto his team, Governor Gavin Newsom is targeting the whistleblower. I mentioned that almost no one is being arrested, and this is why almost no one is being arrested. In my experience, those who enforce the law have the most to gain from breaking the law. In other words, Governor Newsom or Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota will not arrest themselves or their friends. However, none of these people will escape judgment when it comes to the last day. The problem with cronies is that they are self-righteous, much like socialists. Speaking of which, the battle for Cuba. Cuba has had massive blackouts as a result of the energy embargo. They were depending on Venezuela, but that no longer works. Now, they are depending on Russia, and we will see what happens. Vladimir Putin is sending ships to intercept the American blockade of Cuba. Meanwhile, the Cubans are attacking government buildings and spraying them with anti-regime slogans. Much like with the recent entry into Iran, we are being treated as the liberators and our presence is celebrated. Moving on, much like the problem of Chinese sweatshops and child labor, most, if not all, of the problems that Cuba is experiencing are entirely because of the regime. America is forcing the regime's hand. This island nation may soon change. A lot. Now, while we are waiting on Cuba's future, let us see how the mall cops at the airport are doing. TSA teams up with ICE. The glorified mall cops who make up the Transportation Security Agency, or TSA, are not getting paid. As such, a lot of them are calling in sick. This results in longer lines to get on planes. This is yet another reason why we do not need the government to do everything. If this were a private company, the money would be found. Moving on, because they are so short-handed, it is taking longer to board flights as if the TSA actually has something to do with planes being in the air. However, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, is there to help them out. While the TSA is doing its thing, ICE is largely keeping the ground secure. Without people like Georgina Floyd or Saint Taillight getting in the way, things are going smoothly while the remaining TSA agents do their unconstitutional job. If only Democrats could just get off their high horse and fund the TSA. Or we could just eliminate it altogether.
Maybe I'm just blowing smoke. Maybe I'm completely off my rocker, but that is just my opinion. And do not forget to like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe for more. But before you go, on the left I have last week's video, but you may also enjoy the video on the right.